The legend brains of OpenClaw. We have these. I think you guys did you don't need a more detailed version than that. It's a highlight of the day today, and I'll pass it over to Peter to give you an inspirational pep talk.
I presented in a lot of places, but actually I don't think I presented at a university. So that's the first. And to follow up on my last speaker, I don't actually hate crypto. I think the technology is really interesting. It's just that I got that side that is like all the gambling and grifting and scamming, and that subculture is just not very pleasant. So when I was asked here to do the keynote, at first I wanted to speak for half an hour, and I'm like, I actually can for once. It's been a rough month. I wondered what message is actually important for you to hear. We are in an incredibly interesting period in our timeline. Coding agents are finally good, and I would say they only really got good in October. And the world is slowly waking up. I saw a graph where there's now 4% of comments on GitHub are made by agents. This is of course very inaccurate because you don't always know, but it's a tiny blip. And I think we are very rapidly moving to a world where this number will be much, much higher. Right now there's still some people who write code by hand. And then there's also this fear where people say, oh, coding agents will replace humans. I would see them more as a rocket that amplifies your abilities. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you're doing, if you have no system understanding, you'll only be able to get so far. And then there's also this whole argument where people say, oh, these coding agents, they make us lazy and dumb. And yeah, this is one potential way you can use that. But there's ways where you can actually build something great and learn it. I can only tell you, I've never learned as much as fast than in the last year. So use your brain and don't be lazy with prompting. I wrote up some tips on how I do agentic engineering on my blog, so I'll not reiterate everything there. It's on slidebeat.me. And please don't call it vibe coding. I don't have a Wikipedia article, but OpenClaw has. And in the very beginning it says it's made by Austrian vibe coder Peter Steinberger. I don't know if I can edit it, but maybe someone else can. I always say, can we just call it agentic engineering? Because I actually have a discussion with the agent. I explore the problem space from different domains. When you work with an agent, you always have to imagine, well, put yourself in the shoes of an agent, right? You start a new session, the agent knows nothing about your project, and then you give him a one-liner prompt. What do you think will happen? So if you guide them a little bit, it's like, look here, look there, think about this. Treat it more like a discussion like you would have with a human being, then you'll get much better results. Sometimes when I don't know what's best, I tell it to do the best practices, like get ideas from other places. When I work on bugs, I often also give an image because it's the fastest way to give an agent more context without having to write a lot. Also, don't write. There's stuff like WhisperFlow where you can actually use voice. It's just higher throughput, unless you're like a super fast typer, which I'm not. And especially when you write code. You know the joke is I do agentic engineering, but then maybe once it's like 3 AM and I get really tired, I switch to vibe coding, and then the next day there's regrets. But what's important is when you use agent, especially when you work on something that touches a lot of places in the code base, agents have a really good understanding of where the pain points are, where they have to do more work than necessary, where the holes in your architecture are. So you can always ask things like, okay, what could you refactor? And it will often give you very useful things where you can clean up as you go along. There's so many interesting ways you can play with prompts. And some are really like humans, you know? Like you discuss the feature to perfection, you build it, and then you ask the agent, hey, now that you built it, what would you do different? And you get surprising results by things the model realized as it's actually building the code. Kind of like we realized, oh my God, I should have done this differently after we built the whole thing. So a lot of the things that you learned when building code, you can easily apply and bring to agents. But of course, if you only do like a one-shot prompt and hope for the best, won't give you a good outcome. Yeah, I can also give you an update, a quick update on OpenClaw. This morning it has been declared dead, by the way. So I read a tweet that there's no releases in 2 days, so obviously the project is dead now. Yeah, I tried to actually have a weekend for once. But now I'm working behind the scenes to add more maintainers, bring more people on, also like for Discord and community management. I also work with Dave Morin to set up the foundation. The main goal for that is actually that we can accept tax-deductible donations. So we can actually use the money to hire a few people full-time. So it's not just only free forks, and people can actually spend full-time on improving it. Personally, I'm still the person in charge that does the releases, that ultimately decides what gets into the code base or not. Current releases still contain more than 50% of commits from me, so I'm working hard on changing that number by coaching people and by eventually being able to hire some. You know, playing with new tech or hacking, what you're going to do here this week, is the best way to learn something new. The key element really is, don't just read about stuff, play with it, and actually go and build things. You know, it doesn't even matter if you end up using it or not. It's really more like the road that's important. At least that's how I learn, by building, by having fun. I don't know if anyone ever played Factorio, but to me, OpenClaw is like factorial times infinite. You know, there's this giant sandbox where you can play, and you have an infinite number of levels with infinite number of topics. So maybe one day you want to play memory and you want to like figure out, oh, is there maybe something better than markdown files in text? And you can level up that way. Maybe another time you go and look at the agentic loop, like how messages actually queued up. Are there better ways? And play with different ideas on that front. So I always saw the project as this giant playground for me, where I could learn an infinite number of ways how to use AI. And really, maybe write your own. Like, the agentic loop, to me, is like the hello world in the AI age, and it's really not that hard. Yeah, so OpenClaw is really meant as your hackable at-home installation, something for enthusiasts that want to take time and learn. One thing that bothers me a little bit is I see all these one-click installers coming up that maybe run a VPN, that might be encrypted, but probably are not. And I purposefully stopped making installation easier to encourage people to actually like think a little bit and revisit, because there's still things like prompt injection which we just haven't solved as an industry. If you are not able to do the default install, you probably will not understand the risk factor that this project has, and you shouldn't use it. But yeah, that's outside of my control. I can just say that this is not a good idea, and this is probably not what you should install your mom. I've been with OpenAI since that's the fastest path where I can actually build an agent that I would install, or that my mom would just run, because there would not be any install step. Yeah, but that's about as much as I can share on that front. I mean, my official start is on Tuesday.
Yay!
Oh, I know. You know, when you become like more popular on the internet, then there's a myriad of people that all give you their opinions, and sometimes it's really difficult because like sometimes get like 50, 100 emails a day, where I should do everything in all directions. Yeah, I do have a little bit of influence already, so I've poked some people at OpenAI. So you all get free subscription for Codex for a month. And you know what, I could say, oh, it's the best coding agent on the market, and then people would say, oh, you're an OpenAI shield. But in all reality, I've been saying that since October, so maybe I was the unpaid OpenAI shield since October, or maybe that's just really my opinion. I leave it up to you. No tool is perfect in all places. You know, if you use Cloud Code, it's definitely more pleasant to use. It has a nicer personality. The Codex is a little more, dare I say, dry European. But Claude will probably tell you it's 100% production ready, and then you run into bugs. Codex, by default, will read much more of your code, and usually finds a better solution. But ultimately, if you really understand what you're doing, you can use either tool and steer them in a way. It's just different amounts of work. Yeah, and as last thing, there's a box with some OpenAI sword somewhere out there. I don't fully know, it makes it more interesting. That Laura brought over from the office. And with that,